10 Strange Unsolved Mysteries from Around the World. Number 10. China's Dwarf Village. Villages in general are not strange. Villages in China are also not strange. There are many remote ones in this country, but one stands out from the others. Scientists and experts are extremely interested in the inhabitants of Yangtze, situated in the Sichuan province. The reason? Not only are there only 80 residents in the village, but almost half of them are dwarfs. Rumor has it, according to those who live in Yangtze, that a mysterious disease befell the little village more than 60 years ago. Young children between the ages of 5 and 7 were most affected, and the disease caused them to simply stop growing. Experts now know that stunted growth is only likely to appear in 1 in 20,000 people, so what happened in Yangtze is something very much out of the ordinary. Especially considering that historic sightings of the dwarfs claim that several hundred of them were residing in the Sichuan region at one point. As if the mystery affliction wasn't bad enough, some of the children struck by it started suffering from a variety of disabilities. As adults, some of the afflicted gave birth to children who also only grew to around 1 meter in height. The Chinese government has never allowed visitors to the village, inevitably opening up the story to a host of urban legends. It has been said that the citizens felt dark forces had invaded their homes and started believing that they were cursed due to their ancestors' anger over improper burials. Others apparently believe a turtle to be the source of the problem. Some of the villages cooked and ate a black turtle and, soon after, the strange disease hit Yangtze. After all this time, however, it seems that the residents are growing out of the disease. The younger generation has seemingly been spared. Number 9. Dorothy, Eady and Sety. Dorothy Eady was a toddler just like any other. She ran, played, and laughed all day, and was a treasure to her doting parents. Then, the unthinkable happened. One morning, Dorothy was running down the stairs at her home near London when she slipped and fell. So severe was the fall that the 3-year-old was pronounced dead on the scene. But then something very unexpected happened. Dorothy woke up. For another 4 years, her parents had their beautiful daughter back. In 1908, however, everything changed. On a regular outing to the British Museum, Dorothy's parents first became aware that the girl was behaving strangely. As soon as they reached the Egyptian section of the museum, Dorothy was transfixed. She couldn't get enough of the artifacts and sat with a glass-enclosed mummy for a long time, refusing to go home with her parents. Her parents even caught a glimpse of her running around the statues and kissing their feet. After this incident, things took a turn for the worse. Dorothy became almost depressed and would stare at photos of ancient Egypt, insisting that the country was her home and she needed to return to it. A picture of the temple of Sety I at Abydos got her especially excited one day. She rushed to her father and shouted that this place was her former home. Before she found the picture of the temple, Dorothy had dreams in which she saw the buildings and greenery of ancient Egypt. Her interest and love for Egypt skyrocketed, and she joined study groups to learn more about reincarnation and spirituality. She finally moved to Cairo after marrying an Egyptian man and gave birth to a baby that she named Sety. She herself would now be known as Sety. Marriage didn't last. Her habit of going into a trance and scribbling random hieroglyphics at night about her spirit guide completely freaked her husband out. Her writings eventually amounted to around 70 pages and detailed life in ancient Egypt. It stated that she was a priestess at the El Sultan temple and had a child by Pharaoh Sety at the young age of 14. However, she had broken a priestess vow by losing her virginity and took her own life to prevent the pharaoh from being punished for this crime. The hieroglyphics also contained accounts of spiritual encounters with Sety and plans to reunite with him in the Egyptian underworld. This fantastical story has been discarded by many as the ramblings of a crazy person, up until the day that Sety helped archaeologists find the exact location of the temple garden. She also led them to an undiscovered tunnel at the north side of the temple. Sety died in 1981, after having lived the rest of her days at the temple of Abydos. No rational explanation for her memories, dreams, and knowledge of Egypt has been offered, And many skeptics find themselves wondering if Dorothy was in fact the reincarnation of the ancient Egypt priestess, Sety. Number 8. Francis Leavy's handprint. Francis Leavy was a dedicated firefighter during the 1920s. He loved his job, and his peers loved him. He was a pleasant man, always ready with a smile and a helping hand. On April 18, 1924, Francis's colleagues became aware of a change in his demeanor. Suddenly, he was an unsmiling, grunting guy washing a large window at the Chicago Fire Department, not looking at anyone or talking. After a few minutes, Leavy suddenly announced that he had a strange feeling, a feeling that he might die that very day. At that very moment, the phone rang and broke the heavy atmosphere brought on by the firemen's words. A fire was raging at a building quite a long way from the fire department, and no time was to be wasted. In just a few minutes, Francis Leavy and his fellow firefighters were on the scene, assessing the situation and helping those trapped on the top floors. Everything seemed to be on track to rescue everyone from the building. Then, suddenly, the flames engulfed the lower part of the building, and the roof caved in. As soon as this happened, the walls came crashing down, pinning many people under the rubble, including Leavy. Leavy's grim premonition came true. He lost his life that day trying to save others. The very next day, trying to come to terms with the loss of Leavy, his colleagues sat at the firehouse thinking about the events of the previous day. Suddenly, they noticed something strange on one of the windows. It looked like a handprint smudged onto the glass. Eerily, it was the very same window that Francis Leavy was busy washing the day before. The firemen cleaned the window again, but the print stubbornly refused to disappear. For many years, the handprint remained on the window in spite of chemicals used to try and remove it. The strange mystery remained unsolved, but came to an abrupt end when a newspaper boy threw a paper against the window in 1944, causing it to shatter into pieces. Number 7. Jeannette DePalma. In 1972, a dog brought something very strange to the back door of his owner's home. He had sniffed out an almost completely decomposed human forearm on a cliff top in Springfield, New Jersey, and dragged it back to its master, who realized with a great shock what it was. The man informed the police and, after a short search, they found the remains of the body to which the arm belonged. The remains were that of Jeannette DePalma, a teenager who had been missing for 6 weeks. Not only did they find her decomposed body, but there were strange objects on the ground where it lay. Rumors began to fly that the girl had been sacrificed by a local coven of witches. Others believed that Satanists murdered her for occult ritual purposes. The strangest thing about the murder, however, was the fact that no one wanted to speak about it when an article about the incident was in its planning stages. Even after 30 years, people who lived in the area refused to comment or give their opinions on what they believe happened. Not one person who was interviewed wanted their real name used, and this even included the local police department. Leads in the case did not come in the traditional manner. People sent in anonymous letters omitting their addresses and names. One of the letters stated that logs had been placed around Jeannette's body and that the writer of it couldn't reveal his name for many reasons which he couldn't reveal either. Another anonymous writer wrote that he or she knew about a coven of witches in the area who were planning to murder a kid over Halloween. The writer was a child at the time and remembered being terrified of going out trick-or-treating for the holiday. Yet another letter stated that the writer's mom knew DePalma and that they were about the same age in 1972. This letter also mentioned animals being murdered and strung up in the trees after the murder took place. In all of the letters, witches or Satanism was mentioned. One of them reiterated that DePalma was a very religious girl who wouldn't get mixed up with satanic practices. However, the writer also mentions that Jeannette DePalma started becoming a little wild as she got older. The murder of Jeannette DePalma was big news for around 2 weeks after her body was found, and then the absolute silence around it started and remained. Her murderers has never been found. Number 6. Kalachi Village. Something strange is happening to residents of the Kalachi Village in Kazakhstan. They just can't seem to keep their eyes open. Every day, several villagers just fall asleep in broad daylight and remain asleep for at least a couple of hours. Some of them have reported only waking up after a couple of days. There is no apparent reason for these sleep incidents, and more than 100 residents have inexplicably fallen asleep when they were tired over the course of a few years. In September 2014, several children who were attending school on the first day of the new academic year also fell asleep for no reason. Medical experts were unable to come up with a verified explanation, much less a cure or form of prevention. Naturally, some of those who suffer from this condition are terrified that they might die in their sleep. Some of the sleepers have reported strange feelings of memory loss, vertigo, and extreme nausea after waking from their sleep. Other symptoms even include hallucinations. In addition to all this, doctors have found that some of the people suffering from this ailment have suffered other health scares such as brain dysfunction and even strokes. The sleeping villagers are not good for the economy. Not only are their hours of work lost, but fear is causing many people to leave the area. Radiation levels have been tested in the area, but nothing abnormal has been found. Ongoing investigations have yet to turn up any clues as to why this strange affliction has befallen the little village. In 2015, scientists found high concentrations of carbon monoxide in the town. While the findings aren't conclusive, they may provide one more clue in this mystery. Number 5. Girardelli. In the early 1800s, Girardelli was the hot new fire act on the block. Taking on a whole new angle on fire acts, Girardelli was able to swallow red-hot objects without it causing her any pain or harm. Those who saw her perform were amazed at what was happening before their eyes. Girardelli was able to rinse her mouth with nitric acid without it burning holes in her gums and cheeks. To prove that she really had the acid in her mouth and not some harmless fluid, she would spit it onto iron where it would immediately start eating through the metal. Girardelli also played around with boiling oil, filling her mouth with it and then spitting it out, causing a minor fire when it landed on wood. Girardelli didn't stop there. All of her acts had to be bigger and better, so she started using hot wax and molten lead. She heated metal objects, such as shovels, over open fires and then pressed them against her skin. She even pressed her tongue against some of them. In all of these acts, her flesh remained just as it was before, completely unburned. She remained a hot topic all over England, and no one was ever able to figure out just how she did what she did. Not even the skeptics were able to prove any trickery on her part. There is no record of Jo's life after she moved from England, and her amazing acts remain as mysterious as ever. Number 4. Loyon. Something creepy is taking place in the woods in western Switzerland. A man dressed in a military uniform with a gas mask over his face seems to be haunting the place. For more than 10 years now, locals who live near these woods have reported seeing the man walk the same path every day. They have given him the name Loyon, and they are terrified of him. He doesn't speak, and, when he encounters someone, he simply stares at them, and then walks away in silence. A photographer who tried to take a picture of the mysterious man reported him to be almost 2 meters in height. Children are too scared to play in these woods anymore, even though the man doesn't seem to be threatening in any way. At one point, people saw him carrying what looked like flowers while slowly walking down a pathway in the woods. According to the authorities in charge of the area, there is nothing that can be done to get the man to leave the woods since he is not trespassing and has done nothing wrong. At one point, his clothes were found abandoned in the woods with a note saying he was leaving because the risk of a hunt for the beast was too great. It is unknown where the man lives, why he wears a gas mask, and why he doesn't speak. Several theories speculate that he might be mentally disturbed or have a skin disease which would cause him to not want to be seen by others. But, until someone gets him to take off the mask, or at least speak out, the mystery man will remain a mystery. Number 3. Hoia Baciu. Believed by many to be the most haunted forest in the world, Hoia Baciu in Transylvania is the setting for many unexplained, spooky tales. It also doesn't help that the trees are bent and twisted in seemingly unnatural ways, giving the woods a horror movie feel. Several visitors to the Hoia Baciu have returned from their trip terrified, claiming that burns and rashes have appeared on their bodies for no apparent reason. Some even claim to have skipped a few hours during their exploration among the creepy trees. They have no explanation for why they cannot remember what happened during the missing hours. Many people are truly convinced that ghostly apparitions hang around in the forest, and the locals absolutely refuse to set foot in it. Especially since rumors of floating heads and voices emanating from the darkness started making the rounds. It all seems to have started back in 1968 when Alexander Yusuf took a photograph inside the forest of what many continue to believe was a UFO. Another persistent story tells of a shepherd venturing into the woods with 200 sheep, never to be seen or heard from again. Ongoing ghost hunts have turned up no clue as to what might be behind all the weird events taking place here, but paranormal experts are not giving up the ghost just yet when it comes to studying Hoia Baciu and revealing its creepy secrets to the world. Number 2. Cosmic radio bursts. Since their discovery in 2007, cosmic radio bursts or blitzers have been a source of fascination to scientists around the world. The 9 blitzers that have been studied in the years since their discovery have all been plucked from historical data. Then, in January 2015, scientists announced that they identified a blitzer in real time. This means that whatever event caused the radio burst to happen was happening at the time that the scientists called it. It is unknown what causes these radio bursts, and experts have guessed that it might occur due to collapsing neutron stars or flares. The bursts have a length of 1 millisecond and, during this minuscule amount of time, they create the same amount of energy that the sun would create over the course of 1 million years. Emily Petrov, a researcher in Australia, stated that these blitzers occur at a distance of more than 5 billion light-years away from Earth, and the real-time blitzer was noticed near the Aquarius constellation. She went on to say that she and her team will continue looking out for blitzers so as to try and gather some information and, hopefully, one day get behind the mystery of their origin. Number 1. Bukit Timah. During World War II, Japanese soldiers stationed in Singapore glimpsed a strange version of Bigfoot there. Many reported seeing a primate-like creature covered in gray hair and standing up to 2 meters tall in the Bukit Timah rainforest. Sightings peaked during the war, but there are also a few present-day sightings reported every now and then. The Bukit Timah area is now a biodiverse nature reserve that housed several creatures, including tigers, not too long ago. Although it is still a mystery as to what the soldiers and others were actually seeing in this area, some people believe they might have confused macaques for primates. However, according to most experts, this would be unlikely as the macaques in Singapore resemble the ones in Japan and the soldiers at least would know what they were looking at. The last sightings took place in 2007 when visitors told stories of seeing an ape creature being run over by a taxi and another scratching around in trash cans. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.